Today we're talking about how to do a word study, and we're going to be looking at that in a series of steps. When it comes to doing word studies, there are really three basic steps to the process. Number one, you need to choose the word carefully. Honestly, we don't have time every week to do every word that's in a passage. So there is a system of thinking through which word that you want to choose. Number two, we need to determine what that word could mean. What is its semantic range? Then finally, we need to determine what the word does mean in its particular context. A word by itself is not enough to determine meaning, but a word with context, sentences in a paragraph with a situation, does help us to determine meaning. And so that's part of this process as well. So let's talk about choosing your word carefully. Number one, this is important because, again, we don't have time to look at every word. So what are the things that we need to pay attention to? Well, one thing is pay attention to the words that are crucial to the passage. That is, they seem to have the main idea. They're the theological thrust. They're the crucial aspect. If you understand that word, the passage will make sense. So that's one thing to look for. Also, you want to look at repeated words. In 1 Peter, it says, "Be holy, for I am holy, therefore be holy." Well, the word holy is significant in that text. In John 3, Jesus explains to Nicodemus the idea of being born again, and you must be born again. That's one of those things that we probably need to study to make sure we understand it. Anytime there's a figure of speech in a text, you're the salt of the earth, you're the light of the world. You might want to go and study exactly what is meant by that figure. And then words that are unclear or puzzling or difficult. We always think about the word propitiation. That's probably a word that you need to go study to do a word study on. So here on the screen is a text from 1 Peter 1, 22 through 25, and just thinking through this with words that were crucial or seem to be repeated, things that we might need to study. If we think through this passage, we see, now that you have purified, well, what does that mean? Yourselves by obeying the truth, so that you have sincere love. All right, that's actually going to play an important role because we're going to see love a couple of times in this text. And actually, because I've done the word study, there are two different forms of the word. So that you have sincere love for each other. Love one another deeply. There again, that idea of love, this time more of a brotherly love from the heart. For you have been born again. There's that idea of born again, that figure of speech. We probably need to understand what that means. Not of perishable seed, but of imperishable. Probably think through that, etc. All the way through this text, you see that there are many words that you need to look at. You don't need to look up, do a word study on the word now or that or you or have, but probably purified, probably truth, probably love. And this is going to help reduce your prep time as you limit your research to the few significant words in the text. Well, the second step is this. After you've chosen the word, then you need to determine what that word could mean. Now, when it comes to this, we're talking about what is called a semantic range. That is, this is the term that refers to all the meanings of a word. So if we think about that, it's like this circle. This is every little thing that a word could mean. Let's take, for example, the word spring, S-P-R-I-N-G. Well, a spring can mean several things. It could be a source of water in the woods. It could be a jumping action. A kid springs up from the ground. It could be a metal coil that is used in mechanical things. It could be different things. I mean, spring has several different, it could be the time of year. So those are four different meanings that all are given to the one word, spring. So that's its semantic range. Now, note, every one of those words has a unique context. But at this stage, what we're saying is, what could the word mean? So if we do this, and we did it based on the English word hand, we would see there's several things that the word hand could mean. The terminal part of a vertebrate forelimb, a personal possession, a sign, a pledge, a style of penmanship, a unit of measure. All of these are the things hand could mean. Now, when it comes to doing this for us, we're going to do it on the original language word. So Look at Matthew 25:14. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. That's the word we're going to look at. Now, if we did this on the English word, which is not what we really want to do, but just an example, the word entrust has these different meanings according to the online dictionary. To confer a trust or to commit to one another with confidence. When it comes to doing the semantic range, we don't want to look at the English word. We want to look at the original language word behind it. In this case, it's the Greek word paradidomai. And so if we look that up, it has these 5 different meanings. So step 2, we're just trying to figure out what does a word mean. We'll show you how to find this as well. If we were to look at logos, we would see that in the middle of our word study circle, paradidomai, and there's this circle around it with all these different colors. Each of those colors reflects a different meaning. So this circle in Logos Bible software is actually our semantic range. That's what that's telling you. Now, this is where the concordance is very helpful. Most of you have seen a Bible concordance. Maybe not all of you have used a Bible concordance, but if you don't know Greek and Hebrew, or the little bit of Aramaic that's in the Bible, then the concordance allows you to deal with the original languages without knowing the original languages. Basically, every Greek word has been tagged to a unique number. If you're familiar with Strong's Concordance, the Strong's numbering system, basically every Greek word, every Hebrew word associates word to a number. So paradidomai has a unique number in the Strong's Concordance. And that way you don't need to know the word. You just look up the original word, give, in your English Bible, and then you'll look behind it and find the number. So here's another example of this. If we were to do a word study on Philippians 3:12, if we wanted to find out what the word could mean, what we would do is we'd take our concordance, whether or not a hard copy or a online version or even in Logos, and we would look up the word press that's used in Philippians 3:12. We would look up something like this. We would find the word press in our English section of our concordance. We would go down to where we find Philippians. Now notice the books of the Bible are listed for every time the word press is in the English in the Bible. We would look for Philippians 3:12 because the word behind it may be different in different verses. And then here's the sentence, and you'll see the word there is just reduced down to an initial letter. But I press on to take hold of that. That kind of gives us the context, make sure we're in the right one. And then notice there's a number here, 1503. And notice that all these other numbers are different. We do see 1503 again. That means the word here and in verse 14 are identical. But all these other ones relate to different words that in the Greek or Hebrew mean press in the English. So after we find 1503, we then go to the Greek section of our concordance and we look up that number. So here we have 1503. We see behind 1503 is this Greek word. This is written in the original language. Then we see what's called the transliteration. They have transwritten it, transliterated it into English. So this word dioko would be written like this if we were to write it in English. The omega here would be written like an O, the kappa as a K, the omega as an O. So this helps us to think through how to say it in our language. Now this particular concordance tells us that this word, dioko, is used 45 times in your New Testament. It's related to these other words. That's sometimes helpful to know. And then here we see the semantic range of that word. It can mean pursue, persecute, systematically oppress and harass a person or a group. Can mean as an extended meaning of pursuing a person on foot in a chase. Can also mean this. I mean, all those become the semantic range of that word. Then, of course, you see here where it's used again. Now, what we want to do is look at the semantic range along with the context of our passage and figure out what it means in the middle. And what we're going to find out is that context determines the meaning. So let's go back to the word spring. We said it could mean a mechanical instrument. It could mean a source of water in the forest. It could mean the season of the year. It could mean an action by somebody, a kid jumping up. But the context is what determines which of those four meanings it means in this particular sentence. So if our paragraph, our context of our passage is talking about the weather and the flowers blooming and it being a wonderful time of the year, then we know the context tells us that the word spring is the one where it talks about the type of year, the time of year, the springtime. Now, if the context of this text was about a little boy playing hide and go seek, and then he suddenly sprung up, we would know it means the one about a jumping action. So the context determines the meaning of the word. Now, how do we figure that out? Well, we go through this whole thing and we look up the same word, Philippians 3:12. We look at 1503 and we go back and we read the context. And sometimes it's helpful to then go and look at how this word is used in other places. So we would look up the other use of 1503 here and look at what's going on here. Is that what it means there? And that's going to help us to determine the word's meaning. We're going to then go look up every other time 1503 is used in the Bible to see what was going on that made the writer use that version of the word. And in this case, the word is being translated as persecuted, not as press as it was in Philippians. So what was going on here in Matthew 5 that Jesus would say, blessed are those who are dioko, who are persecuted because of me. Well, the context may help us to determine that meaning. So we have to look up every time this number is used. So if we did that, we would find out that there are different things sorry about that, let's go backwards. We would see that the next step then is to decide what the word does mean in its context. So it's one thing to choose the word, step one. It's another thing to come back and say, here are all the things that a word could mean. And number three, we want to decide what the word does mean in a particular context. So now it's time to select from all those meanings the one that best fits your word. And what you're going to do is you're going to remember that context determines meaning. Think about the spring. Is it the spring of the time of the year? Is it the springing action? Is it the spring of water? Context will always help us determine that. So when we think about context, you'll see the circles of context. And here in the very middle is the word itself. So what's going to help determine the meaning of this word is the immediate context. That's probably going to be the sentence that it's in. Well, maybe that's not helpful enough, the immediate sentence, so maybe you would go out to the paragraph. Well, at some point, you might move for the paragraph to maybe another chapter in the same book because that author is using it in a particular way. Well, maybe it's not in the same book. Maybe it's in another book by a different author. But notice that changes the context a little bit because it's a different person. Usually, we're going to stay within the same book and within the same author. But sometimes you'll have to move outside. Now, some helpful questions to think about. Is there some kind of contrast or comparison going on in the sentence or the context that might help define the word? Let's go back to the word spring. If earlier in the text it's talking about somebody who's crouching down, and then you see the word spring, that contrast is going to help you think through, well, maybe they're referring to this as the jumping action. Because I see the contrast between crouching down and then the word spring is used, and that contrast makes sense. Maybe the second question is helpful. Does the subject matter or the topic of the passage at large dictate a word meaning? For example, in the book of James, the subject matter of the entire book is about suffering for the faith, being persecuted, dealing with the difficulties of being a believer in a world that doesn't endorse that. Well, then when you come up to a word that you're not sure about, that greater subject matter of the overall topic of the book or the passage may determine what a word means. Number 3, does the author's usage of the same word somewhere else but in a similar context help you decide? Well, sometimes you'll find that Paul uses a word in a similar situation in another passage, and it's clear to you what he means. He means spring, like the time of year. So he's using that word in a similar situation in another book. The odds are he's probably using it in a similar meaning. Now, you can't go by that alone. So again, think through the contrast, the comparison, the subject matter, and make sure that you're making the right decision. But it's at least a helpful question to ask. Next, does the author's argument in the book suggest a meaning? Sometimes the author is focusing on one particular issue, much like I said earlier about the book of James, or maybe it's about faith or something like that. That is going to help direct the focus of this context question. And then finally, does the historical situation tilt the evidence in a certain direction? That is, why is Paul writing it? What's the historical background of a passage? If he's writing to the church at Ephesus and they are dealing with the issues of the temple and the idolatry that's going on there, and there's the goddess the fertility goddess Diana or Artemis, then when he gets to the section about the lust of the flesh, maybe he's really talking about lust in the sense of what's going on in that prostitution area of the temple. So sometimes the historical background will help you understand the direction as well. Now, let's run through this kind of in a quick, rapid pace, but just to kind of show this one more time. If you were to be in Romans 12, verse 1, and you're studying the word offer, here's a way you might do it. You would look it up. You would find the word. We've chosen offer. Then we're going to go to our concordance, and we're going to look up offer in the English section. We're going to scroll down until we get to Romans 12. There's Romans. There's 12:1. And we're going to go all the way across until we find the number, 4225. Then we're going to go to the Greek section of the concordance and look up that number, 4225. Here's the word, peristemi, or peristemi. We're going to look up all the text here. Whoop. We're going to look up all the, sorry about that. Very sensitive mouse today. We're going to look up and see that all the semantic range here, all these different words that it could mean. And then we're going to go and look up every one of these words and find out how they're used in their context. At the end, we're going to end up finding out that this word could mean 9 different things. Well, we're going to look up all these different issues. We're going to look at all these words and try to figure out what's going on that made them pick stand before. What made them pick put at my disposal? What made them pick come? What made them pick present? What made them pick here bystanders? We're going to read through all those to think through the situation. We're going to notice that these two are the most likely ones. Well, then we're going to go through and see how Paul used that same word in other passages in Romans. And then that's going to help us figure out what he's saying in our text. And we're going to find out that most likely, best we can tell, the word offer, although it had 9 different meanings in its semantic range, in Romans 12:1 means to present someone to someone. And so that's how you do the word study process. Now we're going to show you how to do the same thing, but we're going to use some digital software to do it. A website is available to you called BibleStudyTools.com. Bible Study Tools is a great way, if you don't have access to a concordance, to do the very same thing. I want to show you just quickly how you would get the same information using this website if you didn't have access to it. So Bible Study Tools, you can go through and read parts of the Bible there and other translations and audio plans and different things, or you can study. And you'll see there's a library and Bible study and videos and commentaries and dictionaries, encyclopedias. This is great for our online students to go to and use. Notice right here in the middle, there's a link for concordances. So after I click on the concordances link, it takes me over here to a page where we can begin to study. Now I'm going to go down here to Strong's Exhaustive Concordances and use that as our focus. Then personally, I use the New American Standard Bible, and you want to make sure that your concordance matches the Bible translation that you're using. So if you're using King James, use that. If you're using NIV, get an NIV exhaustive concordance, but we're going to use the New American Standard for now. Once I do that, I'm going to see here that I have several different passages or parts of the Bible. We're going to go right back to that Romans one. Then we're going to pick our chapter 12, and then we're going to go right back here and we'll see. So here's our passage, and if you don't have these blue links, then what you need to do is go to this little cog wheel, click on it, and make sure that Strong's Numbers is turned on. That way, when you click on it, you'll be able to link to it directly. So now we're going to look back into our verse, and here, therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present. Now, we were using the NIV translation earlier, to present, and I think it said there to offer, but it's the same word. We're going to use click on this one now. So here we are. We have our word peristemi, like we saw earlier in the other concordance, the paper copy version. We come down and we see there's the Strong's number. Some entries or some concordances have what they call the GK system. They're similar. It's a little bit more fine-tuned than the Strong's numbering system, but either way, it's just a number that reflects the original word. You see here, we have the original word, just like we did in our paper copy of the concordance. Then we have the transliteration here. And then notice here, we have our definition. And so if we look here, we see that we have the definition to place beside or near. And then we see here to stand beside or to do that. And then we have these different smaller definitions or sub-definitions. And there's the one that we see that means to present, to provide, to present a person from another, to see in question. We see all the different concepts there. And then if you look at the very bottom, you'll see that in the New American Standard, this word is used a total of 41 times. So this is our semantic range right here. This is the different ways that word is translated in the New Testament. And you see the variety of ways and each number. So bystanders, it's been translated that way 5 times. The other things that you see here that'll help you are you see the word origin. It's related to these other 2 words, and you can click on those and go to that entry. The Theological Dictionary of the New Testament gives you this entry if you want to go research that. And it tells you the part of speech. It's a verb. The other thing that's helpful here is to see the New American Standard verse count. So you can see that Matthew uses peristemi 1 time, Mark 6. It's in Acts 13 times. That's interesting. And so this will then help you. And if you are studying the word and you say, well, how is Paul using it in Romans? Then you just click on the word Romans, and it's going to take you back out, and you're going to see all the passages, and you're going to be able to look at them within their immediate context, and then you can go scroll right through all those and do a comparison. Now, that's how you would do it if you were to do it on the website, but how would you do it if you were using Logos Bible software? So here we are in my Logos Bible software, and I have opened up my Bible, my New American Standard Bible, and I've gone to Romans 12:1. Now we want to show you how to do the word study on this singular word. Therefore, I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present. So there's our word. All you need to do is right-click on the word. Notice that it's going to come up with this list of things, and you could do it on the English word, but that's not what we want to do. We're not trying to find the definition of the English word. We want to do it on the original Greek word. So what we're going to do is go down to the one that has a little circle, like our Bible study wheel that you're going to see in a minute. and it will say lemma, which is the original language word that we're looking for. Click that. Notice that that's now the highlight, and then go over to Bible Word Study and click that, and it's going to open a new window in Logos. We see at the top the original word. We see here our little Bible study wheel, and then we see that word written again. If we click here, it should pronounce the word for us. Then there's the transliteration, and then here begins to be our semantic range. Be present, present, stand by, make, or stand. And then you see here there's actually several different dictionaries that we could look at, and I could click here and see all the varieties of dictionaries, and we could go to those and look up those definitions in the lexicon. Right now what we're looking at is really its semantic range. So if we come down to the phrase translation, we'll see our Greek word in the middle, and the circle explains to us all the different translations that word is using. Notice what happens if I click on a section. If I click on it, then it shows me all the times, 5 times, paristemi is translated as bystanders in the New American Standard. So here now I have it. I have all the words that are highlighted, which makes my looking them up very quick. If I'm not sure of the context, I can click on the link and it will open it up in my Bible, and then I can read it right here and get a little bit more of the context. But notice also, if I go all the way around the text, it changes every time to the next one. Or I can click in the middle and it actually brings up all of them, and I can just simply scroll through and look at the context for every single one. Now, if you go through the rest of this and you have some other stuff, here's the Septuagint, how it translates the Greek and the Hebrew. You can look at the roots. You can look at some of the examples here. There's lots of other stuff in here. Probably the most helpful for you is going to be this whole section right here. Now I can read the way it's translated within its immediate context. Remember, its immediate context normally determines meaning. As I do that, it's going to help me to then determine what I think the word should be in my context and why it seems to be that word. So let's just imagine that we're going to do James 5:14, and we're going to do the word sick. Is anyone among you sick? This is an important difference here. We're going to go over and make sure we're not on the English word, but we're on the one with the little wheel. And then we're going to click that, and then we're going to tell it Bible Word Study. It's going to open a new window. I'm going to see asteneo. I'm going to see some of its meanings. Be sick, physically, be weak, more emotionally, feeble. And then if I scroll down and I click in the middle, then I'll see 15 of 33 times it's used as the word sick. 8 of 33 times it's weak. 2 times are weak. 2 times was sick, 1 time fell sick, etc., etc., etc. Then that helps me to determine what exactly does the word sick mean in James 5:14. Does it mean physically sick, or does it mean emotionally weak? And sometimes our Bible translations pick one, but we need to be aware that there's other possibilities. In fact, if we go through here and we study, we might find that it might mean something other than what we've traditionally thought it to mean. Then again, it may mean exactly what we thought it meant. One thing to note, here in sick, we already are seeing that it's translated sick, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts. Only one time in the epistles is it translated as sick physically. Most of the time in the epistles, it's translated weak. Is there something happening there between the actions of the gospel and the actions that we find in the epistles among Jesus's disciples? Well, that's Bible Word Study. You better go and find out for yourself.